Okay, so we are recording. Um, Thank you, Pragya, again for being here. Welcome to SCAR, which stands for Sacred Cracks, Crevices and Rubies, and really looks at the journey from our sacred scar crevices to the rubies that we mine from them. So I'm so grateful to have you here with me today in conversation. Great gratitude again for saying yes. And I would love to start by asking you, how are you coming into this conversation? How are you in this moment?
In this moment. I'm very happy to be talking to you. I've watched some of your podcasts and really marveled at the conversations that unfold. And I was thinking just before we started about how beautiful the name of your podcast is, because that has been on my mind so much since we decided to do this. Sacred Cracks, Crevices, and Rubies. It's just amazing, and it's what I like about it is how it honors the journey. And it's, we're all, you and I were attending the same Remembering Who We Are session where um, Sachinandan Maharaj was talking about destiny so much about point B. We go from point A to point B, but your
Mm.
podcast addresses the space in between the journey, the, the interstitial spaces, which is great about it.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate your reflection of that because I do feel like the details are so telling. I feel like the details are where the personal becomes universal, and that it matters because sometimes in the spiritual journey, for me, it can feel a little bit daunting at times. This notion of how to get from point A to point B. Can I do it?
Yeah.
Because I don't fancy myself masterful at it yet. So I like to get into the grit of things to kind of see what's going on around it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And share with me, if you would, looking at the last week, was there something that elicited wonder in you, contemplation, something that really caught your attention and took you by surprise?
Yeah, something actually did happen. I was on my computer and I was, in a pensive mood, and I was thinking about my father, who I was very close to, who passed in 2015. And he had, while he was still alive, he had shared with me something he had started to write. And it was called, he had tentatively titled it Floating Roots. And
Mm.
he had shared it with me, and it was just, sitting. Of course, I'd read it many times, but over a long gap, I hadn't. It was kind of in my Google Drive, but I hadn't seen it, and I suddenly came across it again, and it started off this whole chain of reflections about roots and the floating nature of them, especially in how my grandfather, my father, and my own life has turned out, and all of the foreshadowing that's led to all of this. And it just got me started on thinking about capturing it all in a memoir. So that's kind of what was on my mind, and just took me by surprise that there is so much. When you look at things in retrospect, you can connect so many dots.
Absolutely. I so appreciate that title, Floating Roots. Do you have a sense of where that came from? It's such a charming and alluring title with so much dimensionality. Did he share with you where it came from?
When he wrote the piece, he hadn't shared. Hearing it echo. He hadn't shared his inspiration with me, but um, I kind of backtracked into his thought process, and it led me to his research. He had he had finished a doctorate in plant physiology from the University of Hawaii, and he had started that 6 years before I was born, also in Hawaii. And
Mm.
the subject of his research was this plant called Colerpa celluloides. I'm sure I'm not saying it right, but that was the topic of his research. And this is like a seaweed. It just grows and grows and grows, and it kind of spreads its tentacles and it rides across water pretty much, and it leaves behind its structural walls as it just passes through various, and it's like it becomes like a, and it's the important thing is it's the largest single-celled plant form, and it just spreads across and grows and gets larger and larger, leaving behind a structure. And the life is like the growing tip of it keeps moving forward. So I am pretty sure when my dad wrote these last few words that he wrote, he must have had his own research in mind, because our lives have behaved very similarly.
I so appreciate that it continues to grow. It leaves the structure, so there's a rootedness to it, and still life continues. And you had mentioned in coming across the book these connecting of dots, and so I wonder, as you look at your life, um, what dots have been connecting for you that feel most appropriate at this time to speak with, or resonating mostly deeply with you in this moment?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It it's connected through my grandfather and my father and me, because it just seems like such an I don't know, it's just improbable series of events that's happened, because my dad was born to a Gandhian freedom fighter in India. My granddad um, was born in the tail end of the 19th century, and as he grew up, uh, I'm sure you're aware of the movement. Gandhi started his movement in eastern India in a place called Champaran, which
Mhm.
was where the British were exploiting indigo farmers. And when my grandfather was a young man, he decided to join forces with Gandhi and, campaign for a free India. And he got beaten up by the Britishers, thrown in prison as they used to do for nonviolent protests. And they got India to independence in 1947. And my dad was about six years old then, and
Mhm.
my dad lost his dad in 1952, so he was just a few years older when he was pretty much left fatherless.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
one of the stories that my dad told me about his interactions with his dad while his dad was still alive was my grandfather saying to him, he was just playing in the lawn one day, and his dad said, very pensively, "I wonder what you'll do when you grow up. Will you be a rickshaw puller?" So it was that kind of a, he was in a remote place. My granddad had fought for freedom, but didn't know how India will turn out in its future, free of the
Mhm.
British. And he didn't see like a path forward for my dad. And now my dad is orphaned, doesn't have the means for an education, but somehow puts himself through school with the help of some others who were in his life, but basically very strange circumstances. And he studies agriculture in India before getting a Fulbright scholarship to travel to Hawaii, where he studied the Kalerpa that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
So right there is the part of that floating route. It starts with my granddad. It ends up in Hawaii, where I am born, in Hawaii of all places. Like I never even meet anybody my age who was somehow born in Hawaii, and I was just born there. I was 3 months old when they decided to move back to India because he was from such a patriotic background. He, after his education, he wanted to go back and live in India. So that's why I grew up in India. So I'm like
Mhm.
across the pond again, and I was I was I just finished my bachelor's degree in economics when I decided to come back to the U.S. and I've been here since 1988, and
Mhm.
so many weird things, weird coincidences have happened in my life in just this fashion that the Calorpa grows. I
Yeah.
just, yeah, I came here. I just had a bachelor's degree. I didn't drive. I didn't type. I remember going to the employment agent in '88 and the state-run government agency, and he said, "You don't drive. You don't type. I don't know what I'm gonna do for you." And
Mhm.
somehow he found me a job, and and the rest is his history. And then I started going back to school. I got a master's, and I got just now I'm finishing up a second master's in public health. Like this is my very last semester. So, and then in between, I got involved with a nonprofit organization, which I've talked about in podcasts through my
Yeah.
doctor, and got interested in the rights of nature and sustainable farming and agriculture, and now I'm interested in health, and I've spent 30 years just being in the publishing industry. So it's like there's like no rhyme or reason. It just you just kind of go forward where life takes you.
Absolutely. Like those roots, right? You just kind of keep going and going and going. And
Like if water is flowing down like a
yeah,
your windshield, you never know which path it's going to take. It just kind of goes.
none
So
at all. None at all. And I am seeing I'm seeing the lineage with the courage and the conviction of your grandfather. And then with your father, because to have achieved what he achieved, that feels to me like a human born with a particular type of a will. There's a will to thrive even with the trauma of losing his father at such a young age and then coming to a different country, a different context, and then going back when many do not go back. They stay forward. And then you the same thing, kind of leaving what is known and coming into this unknown and making something of it. And then you end up like your father, immersed in the land. It comes back to the land. So grandfather fought for the land, your father studied it, and then you continue on that lineage. So this connecting of the
yeah,
dot feels really
when you
poignant
ask
in your
it on my mind, that I'm thinking about all of this foreshadowing. And yeah, there's an interesting story my dad once told me about when he first went back to
Mhm.
uh, to his ancestral home after getting his doctorate here in Hawaii. Um, he met one of his. He had a wet nurse as a child.
Mhm.
So the wet nurse came up to him now that he's in his 20s and said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're back, my child, and I hope you'll stay." And in his 20s, he didn't want to stay in the village anymore. Like that's when
Mhm.
ambition is at peak, and he wanted to like do something else with his life. And he said, "I'm not here to stay. I'm gonna, go to the city and I have a family to take care of, like in a nicer way to the woman."
Yeah.
And he ended up saying something like, "What's here?" Like not having
Mhm.
cope with that rural place. And
Yeah.
he told me this story so many years later, and he said he was momentarily stunned by her answer because she said, "Here we have land," as if
Mm,
land is everything. So
mhm,
that's also
mm.
a touch point that's come back to me, like being so interested in land and, um, you know,
What a poignant response. Here we have land. And what for her, I think perhaps the thinking, well, of course, once I say that, he'll change his mind and he'll decide to stay. But he decided, I have a family, so I'm going to make home somewhere else. It wasn't the land that particular land that compelled him to stay. What
not at
is the
that,
land? Hmm?
not at that time for sure.
Not at that time, exactly. So I'm getting the sense we're going to circle back to your dad. In this moment, what does land signify and mean for Pragya? What does that mean for you?
It's sinking in more and more as the most important thing.
Mm,
I started a Substack that I call From Soil to Soul, and
mhm,
my own thinking was hugely influenced by my doctor, who I have tremendous respect for him because the work he's doing with an organization called Ethos Primary Care and Ethos Farm to Health. Ethos Primary Care as a medical practice, and Ethos Farm to Health is like the nonprofit side of his efforts. So he just he gave up a successful practice and he bought 342 acres of rural land in New Jersey, and he
mhm,
decided to practice medicine from an old broken farmhand's shed, and and this farm that he acquired was uh, formerly uh, land that had lots of pesticides and
mhm.
GMO farming for corn and soy, stuff that went into feeding concentrated animal feeding operations, supplying CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, and we turned it around, made it completely organic, certified organic, human scale. And over 12 years, this land transformed. Like there's a stream that runs through this property, Raritan River, which feeds so much of New Jersey. And
Mhm.
um, it was full of chemicals. Like there was no life in this stream. And
Yeah.
after 12 years, you the kids come and have like field trips there, and there's little salamanders in it, and fishes, and life has returned, and other biodiversity has returned in so many ways, just from turning your gaze to Mother Nature and not exploiting the land,
Mhm.
getting what we need from it,
Yeah.
but not destroying it.
Mhm.
That compelled me to volunteer for his organization and even serve as executive director of it for 3 years. And that sort of fueled my interest in lifestyle medicine and also compelled me to get a public health degree because so much of it's like people always think in silos lately and they don't think everything is connected. Your land, your soul, what you put in, what you get out. You have to pay, everything matters. You have to pay attention to everything.
Absolutely. You have to pay attention to everything. And again, the connecting of the dots that we are nature and just so appreciating that this pesticide ridden land that he purchased after 12 years, which is what, a blink of an eye, relatively speaking, there was regeneration, that it came back because he tended to it and he cared for it.
Right.
And that in turn is medicine for those who come to see him. And it feels like a radical idea and an idea that I feel its time has come. Like we've reached a particular point where I think probably my perception is we're beginning to see that the way that we treat the land, if you will, which is us, is the way that we treat ourselves.
Yeah,
It's one and the same. And I know that you have been a vegan for many years, and might you share that journey and how going back to the land that ultimately informed how you treat the land that is your body.
yeah, absolutely. It's um, it's just in general we have to stop being so exploitative of everything. You know, and again, Dr. Weiss talks about this concept a lot. That's inspired him, the rights of nature. And there are one or two countries that have actually put in their constitution that nature has rights.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Such elevated thinking.
Yes.
You have to think about nature. You can't go around like now you hear about AI servers, but all of this land is turning into huge, gigantic servers that AI needs. And there's electric cars, but electric cars use the battery components of which will what people hope will come from mining the seabed. So now we're not even happy mining all that we've already mined. Now we want to dive down and get into the ocean floors and exploit that. It's just we have to stop at some point and not let just greed rule us so much.
Indeed. I Francis Weller wrote a book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, and in that book, he talks about the five gates of grief. And one of those gates is grief that has to do with the way that we're treating the environment. And this notion, as I understand it, that grief has somewhat numbed us to the choices that we're making. Or it can be that because of what we do to the land, it seeps into our food, which becomes us, which leads to a bit of a numbness. So the cycle continues on and on and on until there's a breakthrough that can happen. And as I think about you and I think about your returning to your studies to get to receive a master's in public health, can you share what motivated that decision? What do you hope to do with that degree, and what has the journey on the degree done for you and changed for you in looking at public health, nature, land, putting it all together?
Yeah, the inspiration, of course, was my experience at Ethos
Mhm.
uh, and seeing when I was working there as executive director, we made a trip to Newark, New Jersey, which is a city that's doing a lot of work.
Mhm.
It's conservancy. They are converting abandoned parking lots into community gardens, and
Mm.
um, there's the high school there got a huge grant from Ellen DeGeneres when she's still at her show, um, and they invested all of it in just involving the community. And we went to see it. I was so impressed. Like all of these, the school parking lot had all of this stuff happening with um, um, growing stuff where you
Mhm.
imagine that things can grow because that is an underserved area. And
Mhm. Mhm.
they and I was coming from this ethos place of food as medicine. So you
Mhm.
get people, that is one way to solve this problem of underserved areas by growing your own food and and thinking uh, that we're a whole. Like we can't just make ourselves sick and then take a pill and that's it. We have to like
Mhm.
always regenerate
Yes.
ourselves. chemicals, with the right things that we put inside us. And so that made me very much interested in lifestyle medicine. And
Mm,
and the public health connection was that if I have a degree in public health, perhaps I can contribute to policy in some way.
mm, mhm,
Maybe I can contribute to roles where I'm thinking about environmental justice or
mhm,
food insecurities, or even, I mean, you can't do away with the pill or the medicine, but how many people have access to all of the medicine they need in this, the way our healthcare is? I just read, for instance, I just read something about a 70-year-old woman who needed cataract surgery. And
mhm.
she, her natural choice was to go to her eye doctor who accepted her insurance. So she's thinking, great, I'm going to go to my eye doctor. I'm going to have my cataracts looked at, and all will be well. That's her idea. And then she gets a bill for thousands of dollars because the doctor said we don't we don't cover cataract surgery. So apparently her, the kind of insurance she had was siloed into, they will only pay for like eyeglasses or contacts or general eye stuff. They will not pay for surgery. That has to come from
Mhm.
elsewhere. And there was like a huge big fight and lawsuit that she had to go through to make, to fight for her rights. And there are these kinds of imbalances and skewed policies that abound in the healthcare area, where patients who need the drugs, they don't even have access to it because of the cost, because they'll now get tons of medical debt if they go think about doing anything.
Yeah.
There is so much cost uncertainty, like, and in this age of AI, there's another thing I read about how people say they figure out that they need some kind of therapy. They'll go to ChatGPT and ask, how much will this medicine cost me? And ChatGPT will do all of its whatever it does and tell them, your therapy is going to cost you $2,000. And they're like, I can't afford it. I won't go for it. But there is, they are not aware now in this AI world that there are lots of discounts and rebates and other things
Mhm.
that could potentially reduce their costs. And
Yeah.
there's no one that's closing that gap. Like these kinds of minor, there's an expression, microaggressions. I think the
Yes.
healthcare industry is full of little microaggressions
Mhm.
that that make me sick with how much injustice it all adds up to. And it's like one entity is going to collect all of the revenues and all of the profits, and everybody
Mhm.
else is just grist for the mill.
Yeah.
It's so that was my motivation for, trying to at least get the credentials that maybe I
Yes.
could later use.
Really noted. In this world where credentials mean something, right? To actually put it to good use, and to, instead of just getting angry about the imbalance, to do something about it. It goes to that old saying, knowledge is power. To a certain extent, having information, which is what we're swimming in now, right? That's the reason we have AI, all of this information, and how to mine it, how to be really discerning about using of it. So I'm reading you as using your life for
Or
service, going back to your grandfather who did
yeah,
the same.
aspirationally, like
Yeah.
I don't know. Like we never, when you, the title of your show is about the journey, but going from
Yes.
point A to point B. Point A, we have no control over. We come into this world and that's point A. But point B is ever elusive. You don't know. So I'm saying aspirationally, that's my goal. I don't know where my point B is, but I'm hope
Indeed.
I am hoping the intention will get me there.
100%. And I love the intentionality. You know, both of us, we met through a beautiful spiritual community during the height of COVID, which really kept me sane and kept me grounded, and being around such amazing souls. And it's part of the inspiration for SCAR, these sacred cracks and these crevices. And so I'd love to hear from you a particular sacred crack or crevice that led to a ruby, or you feel is in the process
Mm.
of leading to a ruby in your life.
Oh, so many. Well, this getting inspired to get this education is one of the rubies, and um, there is so much learning. Like the organization that brought the two of us together, Uphill, they talk so much about your ego and
Yes.
self-realization. And over the last 5 years, I've taken a really good look at how many times my ego gets me trapped in something that I didn't need to be entrapped in. The web of karma. But
Yes.
but one of the I've had two realizations over the last several years. One was a childhood memory. Again, I love my dad's humor, but he when I was 7 or 8, and I had skipped 2 grades, so I was always
Mhm.
the youngest in every class, and I don't recommend that to anybody who's a
Mm.
parent to a young child. Don't skip grades because it messes you up socially. And
Yeah.
I had so many issues in school. Like I was a nervous kid, youngest. My classmates were 9, I was 7, and I couldn't handle a math concept in 5th grade
Yeah.
or something. And my dad was trying to teach me and using all kinds of patience around the fact that I wasn't getting it. And I remember that I walked out to get a glass of water or something during one of these lessons. And as I was coming in, my dad was talking to my mom in a very worried way and saying, "She's just not getting it. Is she retarded?" And that was, back then that word was used rather freely. So
Hmm.
as a child, I was really upset. I mean, first I didn't know what retarded was. So my first trip was to the dictionary to see what it meant. I was old enough to look into the dictionary, and when I read it, I was like, "Oh my God, he thinks that I'm never gonna make it," kind of thing. And he hadn't said it to me, but I'd heard it. So I feel like the rest of my life became something about trying harder and harder and harder and being like a typical, we talk about Enneagram 3, like a um, achiever, and always trying so hard and getting really upset when with failure or with
Hmm.
stuff like that. And so years later, now I'm working at Ethos, I guess, and and I had done a lot of work towards organizing some events there, and
Hmm.
one of those events went off really well, and then uh, some of the people who were in charge, one person got on stage and just said, um, and he was thanking everybody, and he brought up my name and said, "She has been with us a year and she has learned a lot."
Hmm.
That it felt like chalk on the blackboard. Like it felt so unvalidated to me. I was really, really upset, and my ego was like overacting at this point. Like all this for what? Just to say I've learned a lot. Like he didn't
Hmm.
listen to anything else. And I just, I fell into a depression after that for 3 months. And coming out of it is when I decided to become a coach, go for my public health, like have something that lets people know that that I'm valid on this earth, I guess, which was
Hmm.
from this vantage point seems like such an overreaction and not something I would do at all because now I'm more removed from this ego. I'm like, okay, so it's like a ruby that came out of an angry reaction too. And now
Hmm.
I look back on that and I'm like, in the consciousness I'm in now, I wouldn't bother with it too much. I wouldn't get so attached to the outcome. I'd just be happy that something came off so well and I had a contribution in it. I wouldn't get all bent out of shape about
Yeah.
what it was. And then I was just listening to a podcast by one of my favorite authors, Anne Lamott, who's written Bird by Bird. And she was on a
Hmm.
writer's podcast and she said this phrase instead of, I'll botch it up, but her message was, um, instead of trying so hard, just resist less. And
Hmm.
that seems to have landed for me. Like, yeah, that's so enlightened. Just resist less. Just, flow like the kalarpa of my dad's research or water. Just flow through life and see where it takes you and not be so tied up in action and reaction and
Hmm.
becoming more and more calcified with anger and resentment about how someone treated you or didn't treat you. That is in a convoluted way, that's my ruby right now.
There's no convoluted way in SCAR. Like the more convoluted, the more it feels in keeping with the
Yeah,
ethos of SCAR. And I am again reflecting back to you that you took a sacred crack and crevice and turn it into a ruby of coaching. So it's not just about healing yourself, it's being credentialed to help others who are going through a similar journey. It's
help
also with the
others
public
find
health.
their peace. Yeah, sorry to talk over.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed, absolutely. So there's this service through line, and I'm curious now, Pragya, in terms of the world that we're currently inhabiting, the consciousness of the world that we're currently inhabiting. What drives you as a coach? What yeah, like what is your intentionality when working with a client, especially given the context, right? Because it's not, if nothing is in isolation, there's a particular context in which we come, absorbing it, taking it in. And so, yes, what guides you as a coach?
There's a deep desire, and I'm still working on how to express it well.
Hmm.
I think in my mind, I've come up with this phrase, the man on a park bench syndrome. I was just watching something, some movie, and there's this guy, he's sitting on a park bench in that movie. And to an onlooker, looks like, oh, just a guy in the parks having a wonderful time, like sitting in this wonderful surroundings and just relaxing. But that
Hmm.
man, according to even the story in the movie, is a mess of emotions. Like he's hardly this two-dimensional picture of a man on a park bench. There's so many things happening in his head, so many different, um, ego tussles or inner critic or anger at someone. It's all like in there, just roiling in his head. I also think of the Doors song, Riders on the Storm." there's there's a killer on the road. His brain is squirming like a toad. So everybody is like that. So as a
Yes.
coach, I think the prime responsibility is for someone to, for you to be the instrument that untangles all of these
Mhm.
pieces, and puts them in the right slot where these various emotions belong, and have the person extract extract what's important from without giving them the answer, because all the answers, they have the answers. You just have to be the instrument that extracts it out of them, and make them feel, um, I guess, empowered again, that they have more agency than they know. Um,
And how do you do that? What does it take within you to hold the space so that the detangling can take place and it's less noise and a bit more quiet to be able to actually see where things belong?
yeah, it takes for me, most importantly, is good listening, like
Mhm.
listening to what's in those interstitial spaces of what they're actually presenting with. It's a lot of reading between the lines, of hearing where they might be coming from, and then asking open-ended questions that they can, so they are talking more than I am, like
Yes.
some of what you might be doing as an interviewer. um, and basically, listening is the greatest gift that a coach can give to a person they're coaching, because in this world, that's very hard to find, to find a listener. That's why we are so tangled up inside, because oftentimes our only connection is to someone on Zoom. We don't even meet people anymore.
So, or AI now. There's more and more people having conversation
AI is becoming,
with a
yeah.
indeed, it is the coach, the doctor, the friend, the mentor. Like we're forgetting the power of a human being holding space. When I was in high school, we were asked to choose a song that is very meaningful to us. And the song that I chose, which to this day makes me cry 40 years later, is Whitney Houston's The Greatest Love of All. And she talks about the greatest love of all is learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all. And I ask you, what do you think about that proclaimment as a coach and as a person dedicated to reminding us of our connection to the land and seeing the connection between the way we treat our bodies and the way we treat our land? Do you think that learning to love ourselves is the greatest gift of all? And if I might do two parts, what has your journey towards self-love been like for you? So it's a big question, I know, but you
Yeah,
inspire me.
um, learning to love ourselves is very important. But from some of the practice that we attend, we talk so much about our soul and the super soul within. Uh,
Mhm.
a lot of that learning to love myself is about shedding all of these false identities that I've,
Mm,
in my quest to protect and defend and always be
mhm.
on guard and build up walls around myself, and getting more and more calcified. So learning to love myself is about shedding those layers and no longer building them, so that I can find the soul, and
Mm-hmm.
super soul or God is also within each of us, and turning turning from facing outward to the world and the ways in which I can, you know, ace this material world,
Mm-hmm.
to more inward, to seeking shelter of God, for want of whoever you, there is higher power, whoever your higher power is, seeking shelter there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that to me is, again, an aspirational target, and I think about that a lot. Like, how can I just shed these layers? And there was another lecture, I think, remembering who we are, where, or one of these events that we might have been in, where we were talking about how we deny death as humans. We
Mm-hmm.
we know that we're gonna die one day, but we always live as if we're immortal, and we don't want to think about death. We think it's too morbid, or don't go there, or stuff like that, and wanting to uh, extend our lifespans. And some of this is about knowing that all of the things that you're running after, whether it's power or money or fame or a loved one or romance, whatever, it's none of it is going to go with you. So, is your energy better spent turning your attention to something higher than yourselves, than than finding than fighting for the things that are not going to go with you when you die? So I was just starting to read this book by Ernest Becker, The Denial of Death, and and that's on my mind a lot, because every time that I have this materialistic impulse to achieve something or
Mm-hmm.
do something, I'm like, uh, how relevant is that? And throughout my life, um, I find it very hard to answer what happiness is, because it's not like I've been a sad sack of a person. I've been joyful, I've laughed, I've enjoyed things, but none of that has lasted. Even the high from getting a new job, from getting a new degree, from going to a new place, none of that lasts. It just vanishes in the next instant. So to me, happiness should be something that never goes away. And to answer your question, to love yourself is to go after finding that lasting happiness,
Mm-hmm.
chasing ephemeral things that are going to be meaningless in the face of our impending deaths, whenever that may be.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. I so appreciate that response of and being very clear what learning to love myself is, right? Like really shedding the condition, shedding the personality of what we think we are. The whole premise of remembering who we are is to remind us that we're not this flesh, right? We're not the money, we're not the title, we're not any of that the world will project upon us. And perhaps that identity of that is what leads to learning to love yourself because it's also so fleeting. It doesn't last, and I think that is the denial of death. Like how do we cling? We cling and we cling and we cling
Yeah,
from that place of denial of death, of eradication, of something so ephemeral. Uh, and speaking of time and what lasts, you talked about happiness and it lasting. And I often think to myself, I love this analogy of a message in a bottle. And for me, those messages are really a remembrance of what lasts, like what's truly important. And so, with that in mind, if we were thinking along the lines of taking this particular conversation, this particular snippet, putting it in a bottle of some sort, and then kind of throwing the bottle forward or backwards, whatever, time is not linear, but looking at a time when our physical embodiment will no longer be here. Is there a message that you would like to pass on to those who come after us, to those who came before us, quote unquote? Is there a timeless, let's say, message that comes to mind for you in this moment to share and to emanate out?
Yeah, the thing that immediately comes to mind is what I quoted of Angela: resist less. And um, because otherwise you're always clawing at something. When you
Mm-hmm.
and I That's the feeling that I now want to shed. And so I would say resist less and live
Yeah.
fearlessly, because you are loved and you are sheltered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would be a short and succinct message for my bottle.
Indeed. And if I may delve a little bit deeper, how do you resist less? How do you, because I feel because I love these very succinct, because they're powerful and they're potent. Live fearlessly and being aware of our nervous system and the way the body balances by grounding the nervous system. And so much of what we as humans, even with this large prefrontal cortex, we're still led by the animal brain, the reptilian brain, because it is that fear of annihilation that has us clinging and resisting. So, is there a way that you, for yourself, and also when you're working with clients, a tangible way of resisting less in such a way that the nervous system is grounded enough to allow for that? So, are there methodologies that you have, or um, practices that make it possible to embody resisting less?
I'm a work in progress, like, all the people I meet. But
Yes. Yes.
something that I've latched on to over the years is nothing beats discernment. So,
Mm-hmm.
so live each moment of your day, from the time you wake up to the time you fall asleep. You are always acting, right? Nobody is just sitting doing nothing. Even when you're thinking, you're
Yeah.
acting. So
Yes.
uh, I consciously tell myself to ask, to use the thing that Sachinandan Swami was talking about on Wednesday that he didn't get to elaborate on, the emotional traffic light. So
Yes. Yeah.
you have to spend some time in the yellow light instead of
Mm-hmm.
go or stop. You have to Discernment is that space in that yellow light where you're like, what is this what is this next action going to do for me? Is it going to add to my web of karma, for want of a
Yes.
word, or is it gonna be like something that doesn't incur any mm, negative charge, or you know
Yeah.
uh, it's there was a concept that we studied in mathematics where it was called mod, or absolute value, when
Mm-hmm.
numbers can be -2 or +2, but when you put them in between bars, they were just two. They were not minus or plus.
Mm-hmm.
Modulus, or absolute value of a number. So in everything, just take it as an absolute value of the thing, and remove the charges from it. Like, this is the thing, and what will acting on this do for me? And so always be mindful of the consequences is essentially what I'm trying to say. And there's a um, there's a book, the book that Steinbeck wrote, East of Eden. That's one of my favorite books because it ends with this two words: "Thou mayest." It's always about, we always have a choice. So
Yes.
in every moment, choose the thing that doesn't incur bad karma for you, for want of a better phrase. Just
Absolutely.
that emotional traffic light. Uh, Take pause and think rather than just acting.
Absolutely. I really appreciate the thou mayest, the remembrance of choice. And the only way to remember you have choice is to follow the yellow light, to pause, to begin to slow down. Because without that slowing down, you can't access this part. You can't access that you have choice in the matter, that you can discern. Discernment only comes with, I think, slowness and that yellow light. Um, if you're speeding, you're not going to discern. You're just going to react, right? And that makes the tangle even worse.
That's the thing. The reaction has to stop. You can't just always be reacting to something.
Indeed.
Um,
Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. Thine mayest. I have to read East of Eden, so I appreciate all of the beautiful references you made. And thank you so much. The hour just kind of sped by, and I would love to. I had so many thoughts for our conversation. So, with your permission, maybe we'll see to a part two. Thank you, thank you,
I
thank
would
you.
love to have a part two. Just time
We'll
just
do
ticks
a part
by. I can talk to you forever, Gurlane. It's just
Same
amazing.
here. Same here. Absolutely. You planted so many seeds. I'm going to write in my journal for part two what that looks like, and we'll do that. So I'm gonna end the recording now, and